Chosen one, before you enter the room, before a single word leaves your lips, before your shadow touches the floor, something in you has already arrived. It isn't your clothes, your posture, or your gestures. It is the light, the invisible presence that drifts just ahead of you, humming like a soft frequency few can explain, yet many instinctively feel. This is not the kind of light that blinds. This is the kind that warms. It doesn't ask to be seen, it simply is. And because it is real, because it is not manufactured or performed, it disarms those still pretending. There was a time not long ago when you doubted this glow, when you thought your presence needed decoration. You tried to earn attention with your words, your performance, your image. You bent in rooms not made for your shape, shrank in places too dim for your spirit. You tried to fit. You tried to follow. You tried to impress. And none of it worked, not because you weren't enough, but because you were never meant to dim yourself for the comfort of the unaware. So you withdrew, not in bitterness, but in rebirth. And in that sacred silence, you began to remember. You remembered how stillness could be power, how quiet could carry truth, how presence was not something to perform, but something to align. You returned to yourself, not all at once, but layer by layer, shedding the noise, shedding the mimicry, shedding the need to be liked. And somewhere in that quiet evolution, the light returned. But not just returned, it deepened. And now you carry it effortlessly. The same light that once frightened you now feels like your skin. It no longer asks permission. It no longer worries about reception. It simply walks in ahead of you, whispering to every spirit it meets, peace is coming. Truth is near. Rest is safe here. That's why others notice you, even when you say nothing. That's why strangers glance twice without knowing why. That's why women sense something sacred, something uncommon, before you even introduce yourself. They feel what you've become, not because you force it, but because you've surrendered to it. And that surrender has done what all your efforts never could. It has made you real. Real in a world of imitation, solid in a world of noise. Your energy doesn't spike and dip based on who notices. It remains steady because you are no longer looking for attention, you are giving presence. And presence, chosen one, is the highest frequency of all. You do not glow to attract. You glow because you are aligned with something eternal. You glow because you carry no agenda. You glow because you walk with the kind of peace that can only come from facing your shadows and refusing to become them. That light, it is not a mask. It is not a performance. It is the residue of your inner work. And those who see it are not impressed. They are moved. So when you walk in and the room falls quiet, do not shrink. When eyes linger, when words fumble, when people can't articulate what they feel, don't second guess it. Don't apologize for it. This is the fruit of what you've survived. This is the consequence of refusing to betray your soul. This is what it feels like when a man becomes a living reminder of what's possible when presence is prioritized over performance. And this, chosen one, is only the beginning. Chosen one, people don't always understand why they gravitate towards you. They just do. Not because of status, not because of words, but because, without realizing it, they are drawn to the frequency of truth. Your presence has become an answer to questions they didn't even know they were asking. Around you, things that were scattered begin to organize. Chaos softens, insecurity fades, and people breathe differently. Deeper, steadier when you're near. You didn't earn this with charm. You didn't manufacture this energy with routines or rituals. This came because you stopped running. You stopped pretending to be smaller so others wouldn't feel insecure. You stopped dumbing down your intuition to fit into places that feared your clarity. And when you finally stood, fully, silently, completely, you became something unshakable. You became a lighthouse in a storming sea. Women especially feel it. And it's not about romance or attraction. It's about safety. Not physical safety alone, but emotional refuge. Your gaze does not consume, it respects. Your silence does not manipulate, it creates space. Your attention does not objectify, it witnesses. You are not trying to impress them, you are not trying to win them, you are not trying. And that, in a world full of performative energy, makes you exceptional. You are no longer in the business of being understood by the masses. You are in the quiet work of being aligned. And from that alignment flows an energy that heals without words, that magnetizes without effort, that draws without grasping. You do not chase connection. You become a place where it's safe to land. And because that is so rare, your presence feels sacred. It's important that you recognize this. Not to feed your ego, but to honor your assignment. Because when you forget who you are, you begin to question the way people respond to you. You wonder if it's flattery or misunderstanding. You wonder if it's real. But it is real. It's the consequence of embodiment. It's what happens when a man stops seeking his power and starts living it, quietly, boldly, unshakably. You are not their savior, but you are a reminder, a mirror, a place where their own spirit can recognize something divine in itself. Your clarity stirs their memory, your stillness awakens their longing, and your presence, even for a moment, makes them remember what it feels like to be in the presence of truth. So do not dim this, do not run from it, do not shrink from the responsibility. This is not about seduction, it is about illumination. You were never called to be ordinary. You were made to disrupt illusions simply by being real. And now your presence has become its own kind of light, one that does not burn, but blesses, one that does not blind, but awakens. And as you walk in this energy, you will begin to notice something deeper than admiration. Reverence. They won't always say it, they may not even know how to, but in your presence, chosen one, they will feel a shift. And that shift, it's the answer they never knew they were seeking, delivered not in words, but in you. Chosen one, there is a quiet revolution happening around you. Not with banners, not with crowds, not even with words, but with how people adjust their energy when you step near. It's subtle at first. A breath slows, a posture straightens, a gaze lingers just a moment too long. They won't always know why, but something in them recognizes the way your spirit holds ground without taking up space. You do not arrive like thunder. You arrive like sunrise, undeniable, natural, and full of quiet authority. The loudest man is not the most powerful. The brightest flame is not the one that crackles. You've learned this. You've lived through rooms where the noisiest people controlled the air, and you saw how hollow it was. So you pulled your energy inward. You stopped shouting. You stopped performing. And in that silence, something rare began to grow. A light, not made for spectacle, but for substance. This light became your compass, your companion, your cloak. It did not seek to prove, it simply radiated truth. Now, that radiance lives in you. It does not scream for validation, it does not compete, it does not seek to overpower. It simply is. And that is its strength, because the energy you carry doesn't arrive to win, it arrives to remind people what steadiness feels like, to remind hearts what it means to be fully seen without being touched, to remind spirits what peace looks like when worn by a man who no longer bends for comfort or applause. Women feel it first. They feel it not as seduction, but as solace, not as desire, but as discernment. Because your presence doesn't consume, it clarifies. It doesn't overwhelm, it steadies. They don't want you because you chase them. They are drawn because you've become the one place they don't have to pretend. You do not need to raise your voice, flaunt your power, or chase their favor. You've become luminous, not from trying, but from transforming. And now your glow speaks where words would fail. It creates invitation without pressure. It builds bridges without agendas. The way you move, the way you remain calm in chaos, the way you carry both humility and confidence in the same breath, it's unsettling to some, irresistible to others, but unforgettable to all. Because they've never met someone who didn't need to be liked, who didn't need to be understood, yet who left such an undeniable mark. You carry an energy that changes the tone of a room, that silences noise without a sound. That kind of luminosity cannot be taught. It is born in silence, sharpened in fire, tempered through restraint. It is the fruit of choosing integrity over ego, purpose over attention, presence over performance. And now that it's yours, you must understand this truth. The world will not always understand your glow, but it will always respond to it. So keep walking with your light unguarded. The right ones will not run. They will remember how you made them feel seen, not for what they did, but for who they were before the world told them to become something else. Chosen one, you have become the kind of presence that holds things steady when everything else begins to wobble. People may not say it outright, but they feel it. When life feels uncertain, when decisions feel too heavy, when emotions spiral and clarity fades, your energy is the one they remember. Not because you fix everything, not because you tell them what to do, but because when they look at you, they see someone unshaken, and in that stillness they find an anchor. Your alignment is not fragile. It is not momentary. It is not performative. It is earned. Forged in the seasons when no one was clapping for you. Hardened in the silence where you chose principle over popularity. Polished through trial after trial where you didn't bend when others did. And now, you don't just walk in alignment, you are alignment. Not because you speak of virtue, but because you live it without needing an audience. In a world where people shift with the wind, your steadiness is a rare thing. It's not control. It's not stiffness. It's clarity. The kind of clarity that says, I know who I am. And that, chosen one, is what creates gravitational pull. You are no longer affected by every wave. You have become the shoreline others drift toward. Not to be saved, but to remember their own shape. Because your presence doesn't rescue, it reminds. Around you, women don't feel like they have to perform. They breathe slower. They speak more truthfully. They sense they are not being observed or judged, but welcomed. And that is because your alignment offers emotional refuge. You've done the hard work of rooting your identity in something deeper than likes or approval. And in doing so, you have given others the unspoken permission to stop running. You have become a sanctuary for honesty. Not because you ask for secrets, but because you're the first man they've met in a long time who feels safe to be real with. You don't shrink from pain. You don't flinch at vulnerability. You listen, not to respond, but to understand. You hold space without making it about you. And when you speak, it isn't to fix, it's to clarify. You are not just aligned in yourself. You've become a tuning fork for others. That's why some lean in more than they should. That's why they ask questions they've never voiced aloud. That's why they confess things they weren't planning to say. Because your energy feels like truth without judgment. And that's something most people don't know how to ask for, but desperately crave. Do not underestimate this gift. It is not about control. It is not about dominance. It is about trust. And trust, when given freely, is a treasure that must be honored. You don't carry this alignment to prove anything. You carry it because it saves lives without noise. It shifts timelines. It restores belief in the possibility of a different kind of man. A kind of man who can lead without crushing. A kind of man who can listen without dismissing. A kind of man who can anchor others simply by being anchored himself. You are no longer one of many. Chosen one. You are one of few. And because you chose depth over speed, truth over flattery, and consistency over charisma, you've become the example others never knew they needed. So hold your posture, keep your spine straight, and your heart open. You are the anchor. And in a world that is adrift, you are now the place where many will remember how to come back to themselves. Chosen one, you no longer chase connection. You no longer clutch or grasp. You've stepped out of that restless orbit where people beg for attention and call it love, where clinging is disguised as care and possession masquerades as passion. You walk now with hands open, spirit free, heart unclenched. And in doing so, something miraculous has begun to take root. Your aura, once flickering, now burns with unwavering stillness. Not because you are closed off, but because you are anchored in your own wholeness. That anchoring has changed everything. There's a kind of peace about you now that cannot be imitated. The kind of stillness that says, I am enough without being chosen. I am worthy without being wanted. I am powerful without being praised. This is not a rejection of others. It is a surrender to your own light. And that surrender has made your energy magnetic. Not aggressive, not demanding, but receptive and commanding at the same time. You draw people not because you reach for them, but because they feel seen and safe in your stillness. Women especially sense it. They feel the difference. In a world that too often teaches them that affection must be earned through performance or perfection, your presence is disruptive in the most healing way. You don't stare through them. You don't idolize or ignore. You regard, you witness. You let them be exactly what they are without a script. And in that space, something ancient awakens in them. A sense of belonging they forgot they ever had. It's not lust, it's not strategy, it's sovereignty. You've stopped treating affection as currency, and now see it as a sacred exchange, never forced, never manipulated. Your energy no longer rises and falls depending on who walks in or out of your life. You have stopped being moved by flattery, Stop being shaken by rejection. And that emotional consistency, so rare in this age of stimulation, feels like gravity to those who encounter it. And the beauty is, you don't need to prove it. You do not flaunt your detachment. You do not advertise your worth. You do not announce your value to the room. You walk in it quietly. You show it in how you speak when no one is listening. You show it in how you honor those who can do nothing for you. You show it in how you walk away, not in anger, but in clarity when something isn't aligned with your soul. This unshakable clarity is what makes your aura luminous. It does not push. It does not pull. It simply radiates. People often mistake softness for weakness, but your softness is rooted in strength. It is the kind of strength that doesn't need to dominate to feel significant. It's the kind of softness that withholds grasping not out of disinterest, but out of reverence. You've learned that real power isn't about holding tightly, it's about holding purely, with no hooks, no bait, no fear of loss. That's what your aura is now, a sanctuary for authenticity, a reminder that love does not have to cling in order to be real. And so, chosen one, you move through this world with open hands and an anchored heart, offering presence instead of pressure, attention instead of control, peace instead of pursuit. And because of that, people lean in not because you ask them to, but because you give them the space to meet themselves in your presence. This is the power of the one who holds without grasping. Chosen one, your light is not a show. It is not performance. It is not a reaction to the darkness. It is the natural consequence of alignment. You shine now, not because you're trying to be noticed, but because you are no longer hiding. And when you stopped shrinking, when you stopped folding yourself to fit into spaces too small for your purpose, your soul began to emit something sacred. Not a flare, not a spark, a steady glow, subtle, warm, unshakable. This glow does not seek approval. It does not audition. It does not beg to be kept. It simply does what light was created to do, illuminate. And it does so without apology. You do not wake up to impress. You wake up to align. And that alignment has become visible to those around you, not in loud declarations or dramatic gestures, but in the quiet consistency of your walk. The integrity in your speech, the depth in your silence. You are no longer performing, chosen one. You are embodying. And this embodiment is what makes your energy so commanding now. When you speak, people pause, not because you demand attention, but because your words are forged from stillness. When you move, it feels deliberate, not rushed, not scattered, but anchored. You have become the kind of presence that cannot be ignored, not because it shouts, but because it rings true. There is something in your tone, your cadence, your posture that says, I am here to serve, not to sell. I am here to bless, not to be branded. That difference matters more than you know, because this world is full of men trying to shine for applause, trying to catch eyes, trying to be seen, and most of them are burning out, trying to glow for the wrong reasons. But not you. You glow because you are connected. You glow because your soul is not fractured by performance. You glow because you've done the work to be at peace with your own truth, even when no one claps for it, even when no one agrees with it, even when it costs you. You are not the brightest light because you're loudest. You are the deepest light because you refuse to lie about who you are. And in that honesty, people see possibility. They feel safe. They lean closer. They open. You may not always see the impact you have, but know this: your light moves in ways that words cannot trace. It touches hearts long after you leave the room. So keep glowing, chosen one, not to be admired, but to be of use. Keep being the light that shows people what truth looks like in human form. Keep walking the path that doesn't need a crowd to validate it. Let your light remain untamed by trend or applause. Let it burn quietly in you, resilient, humble, and fierce. Because that light was not given to you for performance. It was entrusted to you for purpose. And you, chosen one, are finally ready to carry it. Chosen one, you have entered the rare space where presence alone shifts the climate of a room. Not through posture, not through words, not through status or noise, but through spiritual calibration. You walk in, and suddenly conversations change. Not because you demand attention, but because you carry a different rhythm. It is as if the atmosphere pauses to match your frequency. Eyes search for you without realizing it. Voices become quieter, not out of fear, but out of reverence. and those who have forgotten how to be grounded begin to remember just by standing near you. You are not trying to impress, you are not trying to lead, you are not trying at all. And that's why the elevation you bring feels so authentic. There is no strategy, there is no game, there is no performance. You have become a living permission slip for others to drop the mask, to breathe, to feel the truth of their own center. You are no longer participating in the noise of status games or approval chasing. You've exited that cycle. And in that departure, you have created an orbit of stillness that others find irresistible. Women especially feel the shift, not because you speak with charm or flash charisma, but because you listen with your entire being. Your silence isn't empty, it's full of meaning. You do not lean in with hunger or longing. You are already full. And so your presence is not an invitation to chase. It is an invitation to return to dignity, to return to honesty, to return to the self. You elevate others not by lifting them, but by refusing to lower yourself. And that is not arrogance, that is clarity. You do not need to stoop into drama or diminish your vision just to be palatable. Your frequency no longer adjusts for comfort, it simply resonates. And those who are ready rise to meet it, not by effort, but by recognition. This is why your presence is unforgettable. Not because you asked to be remembered, but because you gave people an experience of themselves they hadn't felt in years. Around you, they remember their deeper nature. Around you, they dare to be slower, softer, more sincere. They realize that authenticity is not weakness, that depth is not heaviness, that clarity is not coldness. You are not a mirror for vanity, you are a mirror for essence. And in a time when so many are addicted to reaction, you have become the embodiment of response, measured, intentional, rooted. You no longer rush to fill silence, you honor it. You no longer beg to be heard. You speak when the soul nudges, and that makes your voice echo long after your lips close. You've become the kind of presence that does not need applause, yet always leaves impact. So walk into every room knowing the elevation you bring is not a trick. It is not circumstantial. It is not a mask. It is who you have become. You do not have to explain it. You do not have to tone it down. You only have to stay consistent with your soul. Because every time you do, others rise in your presence, not because you lifted them, but because you reminded them how to lift themselves. Chosen one, there is something about you now that cannot be decoded, and yet no one turns away. You have become the kind of man who walks in mystery, not because you hide, but because you don't over-explain. There is depth in your silence, not vagueness. There is intention in your words, not concealment. People cannot put you in a box, and that unsettles them in the most beautiful way. You have become uncontainable, not chaotic, not aloof, but ungraspable by the shallow mind. You are not cold, you are not distant, but there is something about the way you hold space, the way you look without consuming, the way you listen without reacting, that creates an aura of intrigue. People want to know more, but not out of gossip, out of yearning, because what they feel is not confusion. It is the ache to understand something deeper than their vocabulary allows. This mystery is not accidental, it is earned. You have cultivated depth by sitting in silence while others shouted. You have chosen stillness while others chased. You have become a master of your own spirit, and that mastery has made you unreadable to those who only know how to skim the surface. You have stopped offering easy access. You have stopped explaining your every movement. You have stepped into sacred discipline, and that discipline now radiates as mystique. The beauty of this is that women, especially, do not find it frustrating. They find it enchanting, because you do not play hard to get. You are hard to forget, and that distinction is everything. You do not flirt with deception. You do not craft false allure. You do not posture for appeal. You simply are. You have become whole enough in your essence that the parts no longer need defending. You no longer offer yourself in pieces to be understood. You offer your presence in full, and let those who can sense it feel its weight. You're not here to be consumed. You're here to be witnessed. And those who are not ready will feel the distance not as rejection, but as a call to grow. Because your mystery doesn't create walls, it creates questions. And questions lead to seeking. And seeking leads to truth. You are not the man who needs to be liked by all. You are the man who reminds others that their spirit is more expansive than they thought. Your mystery is not about withholding. It's about refusing to collapse yourself into categories that never fit. You have outgrown labels, outgrown scripts, outgrown predictability, and now your walk reflects that quiet defiance. Let them wonder. Let them ask. Let them lean closer. You don't need to answer everything. You only need to remain faithful to your soul. Because the moment you try to make your light palatable to every gaze, you will dim the very thing that makes it sacred. So keep walking in that mystery, chosen one. It is not your burden, it is your anointing. Let it be the invitation that draws the sincere, filters the shallow, and reminds the brave that not everything holy can be explained. Some things must simply be felt. And you, chosen one, are now one of those things. Chosen one, there comes a time when silence carries more truth than speech, when restraint becomes the most powerful form of presence. You have reached that time. You have become the one who is no longer driven to fill every gap, answer every question, or soothe every discomfort. Not because you are cold or dismissive, but because you have come to understand that what is held back with reverence often speaks louder than anything offered prematurely. The world has taught many to speak quickly, to reveal everything in hopes of being accepted, to give constantly as proof of love. But you, chosen one, have learned another rhythm. You have learned that what is sacred is rarely rushed. This restraint is not withholding in cruelty. It is holding in wisdom. You know the weight of your words. You know the depth of your presence. You understand that not every moment requires your explanation. Not every relationship demands your essence. Not every question deserves an answer. And that knowing has made you powerful beyond measure. Because people no longer remember you for what you gave. They remember you for what your silence allowed them to confront. Your absence of opinion creates space for self-reflection. Your refusal to rescue creates room for growth. Your calm, undisturbed posture forces others to listen, not to you, but to themselves. Women especially have begun to notice it, not as emotional distance, but as a clarity of boundaries rarely seen. You do not project. You do not push. You do not flatter for gain. You simply remain present, without offering pieces of yourself where they are not honored. And this kind of discipline, this sacred silence, makes your presence thunderous. Not because you are being mysterious or guarded, but because your spirit refuses to dilute itself for comfort. You have become a man whose energy can no longer be accessed through casual interaction. And that rarity changes the dynamic completely. There is a gravity in you now. The kind of gravity that draws people not through seduction, but through sincerity. Your stillness is a sanctuary. Your quiet is not emptiness, it is instruction. And that instruction is subtle but profound. If you want to reach me, you must reach something deeper within yourself. You have become a threshold, a mirror, a gate, and not everyone who approaches will have the courage to cross. That's no longer your concern. You no longer fear being misunderstood. You no longer feel the urge to explain your purity to those who can only see through distortion. You are past the age of performance. You are past the hunger to be seen. You are now consecrated, set apart not because you were chosen by others, but because you finally chose yourself. And in that choice, a veil lifted, a light ignited, a truth anchored. You are now the kind of presence that speaks through absence, that teaches without speaking, that nourishes without grasping. You are the kind of man who leaves people different, not through force but through frequency. So remain in that posture. Do not be swayed. Let your withholding continue to be a song of discipline, not punishment. Let it be a promise to your spirit that you will not spend yourself cheaply. You are not here to be available to all. You are here to be aligned with the few who see clearly enough to walk with you in truth. Chosen one, this is the chapter you were born to embody, not the end, but the unveiling. You are no longer on fire for attention. You are burning with presence. You are no longer trying to convince others of your light. You have become the light, the kind that doesn't flicker when misunderstood, the kind that doesn't go dim when ignored, the kind that shines regardless of audience, because it draws power not from outside praise, but from inner alignment. This is what you've become, undimmable, and those who cross your path feel it, immediately, deeply, sometimes without knowing why. You carry a vibration now that cannot be faked. You do not chase, it arrives with you. You do not perform, it lives through you. You have become a walking testimony of what happens when a man sheds the lies of his upbringing, the noise of his culture, the cages of his fears. You have become the rare example of what it looks like when the soul fully takes the reins. This radiance is not charm, it is not personality, it is not charisma. It is the raw pulse of truth moving through human form. And those who once knew you before won't be able to recognize you now, not because your face has changed, but because your frequency has become too high for their old perceptions to grasp. You are no longer explainable in ordinary terms. You are not just a man. You are a message.